Information collection refers to activities that gather personal information. An example of information collection by a government agency would be educational records held by a public university. Information processing refers to activities that store, manipulate, and use personal data that has been collected. An example of information processing would be making a prediction about the number of graduates who are going to fall behind in repaying their federal student loans. Information dissemination refers to activities that spread personal information. An example of information dissemination is when a state government releases a list of felons who are ineligible to vote. Invasion refers to activities that intrude upon a person's daily life. An example of a government activity in this category is requiring those who wish to purchase a gun to have a criminal background check before the purchase is approved and to register their gun at the time of the purchase. The Employee Polygraph Protection Act helps job applicants and company employees maintain their privacy by making it illegal for companies to require polygraph tests as a condition of employment, except for a few types of jobs. The EPPA also makes it illegal for companies to give polygraph tests to current employees, with a few exceptions. The most significant loophole of the Employee Polygraph Protection Act is that it does not apply to federal, state, or local government agencies. The purpose of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act is to reduce the amount of personal information gathered from children using the Internet. The two principal purposes of the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act are to prevent health insurance companies and health plan administrators from using genetic information when making decisions about coverage, rates, or pre-existing conditions, and to prohibit most employers from taking genetic information into account when making decisions related to the terms of employment, such as hiring, firing, and promotions. During World War I, the Census Bureau provided the names and addresses of young men to the military, which was searching for draft resistors. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Census Bureau provided the Justice Department with information about the general location of Japanese Americans. The Army used this information to round up Japanese Americans and send them to internment camps. Additionally, the National Crime Information Center helped the FBI identify James Earl Ray as the assassin of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The NCIC helped the FBI capture Timothy McVeigh, who was later convicted of the bombing of the federal building in Oklahoma City. The purpose of the One DOJ database is to give state and local police officers access to information generated by 5 federal law enforcement agencies. Since the database contains incident reports, interrogation summaries, and other such information, there is information about people who have never been arrested or charged with a crime. Critics say local police should not have access to this kind of information, which may include unsubstantiated and erroneous reports that will never be corrected or removed. An example of overt surveillance by a government agency in the United States is the use of closed-circuit television cameras to provide security in public places. Two examples of covert surveillance by the U.S. government are wiretapping and the use of hidden microphones, or bugs. The Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures of their property by law enforcement authorities. The U.S. Supreme Court decision in Nardone v. the United States established that evidence collected from warrantless wiretaps is inadmissible in court. In Weiss v. the United States, the Supreme Court ruled that the ban on the admissibility of evidence collected from warrantless wiretaps included intrastate as well as interstate telephone calls. In Katz v. the United States, the U.S. Supreme Court broadened the concept of privacy by affirming that citizens should be protected from all electronic surveillance conducted without warrants, including bugs. Operation Shamrock began during World War II, when the U.S. government decided it needed to monitor all telegram traffic entering and leaving the United States, presumably as a way of combating espionage. Eventually, the Johnson and Nixon administrations used this surveillance infrastructure to monitor the activities of American citizens opposed to the Vietnam War, including the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Black Panther leader Eldridge Cleaver, pediatrician Dr. Benjamin Spock, folk singer Joan Baez, and actress Jane Fonda. The National Security Agency began its secret wiretapping program after 9/11 in the hope that it could gather information that could prove valuable in preventing further terrorist attacks. The Talon database was supposed to store reports about suspicious activities or terrorist threats near military bases. Controversy ensued when it was revealed that the database was also being used to store reports about anti-war protests and emails from university students planning protests against on-campus military recruiting. The purpose of the carnivore system was to enable the FBI to monitor internet traffic, including email messages. The three most controversial provisions of the U.S. Patriot Act are those allowing the use of roving wiretaps, permitting the surveillance of lone wolf suspects not linked to terrorist groups, and allowing the FBI to seize business, medical, educational, and library records without showing probable cause. The expansion in the use of national security letters has also raised privacy concerns for a variety of reasons. The FBI can issue these letters without showing probable cause, and it has been issuing about 50,000 national security letters every year. Typically, a gag order is associated with a national security letter. The gag order prevents the recipient of the letter, such as a library or educational institution, from disclosing receipt of the letter. Another area of concern is the Stored Communications Act. This act allows police to read emails more than 180 days old, stored by an internet service provider, without a search warrant. This is an important issue because most people allow their email provider to store their email messages. Types of surveillance. A pen register is a surveillance device attached to a suspect's phone line that displays the number being dialed. A trap and trace device is a surveillance device attached to a suspect's phone line that displays the phone numbers of people calling the suspect. A roving wiretap is a wiretap that moves from phone to phone. Roving wiretaps are authorized by the Electronic Communications Privacy Act when a suspect attempts to avoid surveillance by using many different phones.